So many horror films are known for their brutal and iconic endings. I've ranked a lot of death scenes in horror films, but now thinking about the endings, I wanted to make a tier list just for those. As always, I'll be going from S tier to D tier, and I have labelled each of my tiers. S tier is going to be the most brutal kills, so I've named that one Put Shrek on Now, because I don't know about you, but when I've watched something really brutal or disturbing, I just want to watch something happy after. I need to put on something to lift my spirits and maybe get what I've just seen out of my head. A tier is ingrained in my brain. B tier is we'll be thinking about this for a while. C tier is iconic but not so brutal. And the last tier, D tier, is the weakest part of the film. So this doesn't necessarily mean horror films that I don't like, but this is one that I just maybe felt a little bit let down with the ending. Starting off strong, we have The Descent, and we have our final girl, Sarah, who is maybe not so much of our final girl because this film actually has two endings, and the only ending I've actually seen is the British ending, which is the more disturbing ending. We follow a group of girls who go into a cave. They are very adventurous, they love extreme sports, so they go cave exploring, but once they're in there, they realise that they are trapped, so must find a way out. But that soon becomes the least of their problems when they realise that they are not alone, and there is some cave-dwelling creatures in there with them that start hunting the girls. The end of this film, we have one character, Sarah, left, and we get to see her manage to escape, but then she wakes up and she's still in the cave. But I think in the American version of this film, I think they actually just end it with her actually escaping. I'm not entirely sure, but I do know there is two endings, and the only one I've seen is the ending where she wakes up and she's still in the cave. She's still stuck down there. The film does end here, so we don't actually know if she manages to escape or if anything happens to her. So it's not that brutal, but it is very memorable, so it has to go in. We'll be thinking about this for a while. Next, we have the ending of Eden Lake. This is one of my least favorite endings because of how traumatic it is. In Eden Lake, we follow a couple that go away on vacation to stay by a remote lake. Whilst they're there, they end up getting targeted by a group of teenagers, and things just go from one extreme to another. Things just get really out of hand. I don't think the teenagers ever meant to go this far, but they are very troublesome. The teens end up murdering the guy, and we are just left with our final girl. Very much like The Descent, we don't get to see what happens to her. She manages to escape the teenagers and get to someone's house to ask for help, but the people inside the house end up being these teenagers' parents, and the film ends with her in the bathroom and everybody kicking down the door. They are definitely going to kill her. It's really, really sad. This one has to go in Put Shrek on Now because this is just so disturbing and so upsetting. Next is Midsommar. In Midsommar, we follow a group of friends who go to stay with a community in Sweden. They end up being a cult. Our main character, Danny, has a boyfriend who doesn't treat her too well. So this ending is kind of bittersweet when he ends up being a sacrifice for this cult. He's put inside of a bear carcass, then put inside of a building, and they set it alight. Danny is outside. She has now been crowned the May Queen and is accepted into this community. Her boyfriend is really selfish, and he is just not there for her when she is going through so many traumatic things. So at the end, he gets burnt alive and she smiles. She is now part of a community of people who actually care about her. It's not a super gory ending, but it is very, very creative. So I'm going to put this one in. We'll be thinking about this for a while. Next, we have the end of Get Out. In Get Out, we follow Chris as he goes back home to his girlfriend Rose's parents' house. So much happens. They end up being absolute psychopaths. Chris manages to escape the house that they are holding him hostage in, and his friend arrives to pick him up just at the right time. Rose is coming after Chris, but she ends up getting shot, and then Chris starts to strangle her, but as he is doing this, she is just smiling at him. This is honestly so sinister and chilling. I'm gonna have to put this one in ingrained in my brain. Next is Talk to Me. Talk to Me basically centers around a party game involving a haunted haunted, mummified hand. When you play this game, you let a spirit into your body. If you don't follow the rules exactly, then the spirits may stick around. At the end, the main character Mia sacrifices herself, and once she has done this, we then get to see her once she's died. But she is now one of the spirits linked to this haunted object, and when people play the game, she's on the other side. This is more of a creepy and haunting ending rather than one being really brutal. It's one that definitely sticks with you though, so I am going to put this one in. We'll be thinking about this for a while. Next is Final Destination Bloodlines. This is the new film that came out this year. If you've seen my review or any of my videos on the Final Destination franchise, then you know that I wasn't the biggest fan of this film. Hence the name of the film, Bloodlines. We follow a family, and at the end we have two siblings that are the survivors, but they're not the survivors for long. When a train derails, a very bad CGI train, and comes into the middle of the street, it just misses them. They manage to run away from it, but then when they think it's over, logs come off the top of it, basically going to impale them. These logs are the worst CGI that I've seen in a very long time. I really didn't like the ending of this film. It's probably my least favourite part of it. So I am going to put this one in weakest part of the film. Next is a film from last year, and that is Immaculate. In Immaculate, we join a young nun as she moves to Italy to join a new convent. While she's there, she notices some shady things going on. She unexpectedly becomes pregnant, and it basically ends up she is pregnant with kind of like the Antichrist or some demonic baby. The ending of this film is very, very brutal because she gives birth, and then this little Antichrist, whatever has come out of her, she then gets a rock and destroys. Of course, we don't get to see all of it, but this is an ending that I definitely will not forget, so I'm going to have to put it in ingrained in my brain. Next, we have Scream. Of course, this is a slasher film following some teenagers and the villain Ghostface. Like all of the films in the Scream franchise, the ending is the big reveal. It's when we get to see who the killer or the killers are. And in the first Scream film, the killers are Billy and Stu. They both unfortunately end up getting killed. Billy gets shot quite a few times, and Stu gets a TV that falls onto his head. This is a horror comedy film, so we don't get to see too much injury detail. So I'm going to put this one in iconic but not so brutal. Next is another film that came out last year. It's actually my favourite film that came out last year, and that is The Substance. At the end, we get to see Monstro Eliza. We see a combination of Elizabeth and Sue. Elizabeth Sparkle is a TV personality, but she is getting older, and we know what the media is like with women and aging, so she obviously feels a lot of pressures. She ends up taking a drug called The Substance, which causes a much younger version of herself to crawl out of her, called Sue. She can be Sue for 1 week, as long as she also has 1 week as Elizabeth. But of course, she is getting so many more opportunities as Sue, so she wants to be Sue much more than she is Elizabeth. So she breaks the rules, things get a bit messy, and she ends up giving the substance to Sue. We end up with a combination of both of them, a version of them that is very mutilated. We get a big grand ending with Eliza Sue on the stage, and it's kind of sad because you feel bad for her. It very much is reminiscent of The Fly. She still just wants to be loved. The audience are in disgust, and we see the demise of Eliza Sue. She has blood squirting all over the place. It really reminds me of the ending of the remake of Suspiria. Definitely not shy on the gore, definitely brutal. This one has to go in ingrained in my brain. The next ending is from the film Mother. This stars Jennifer Lawrence, and it is a very symbolic film. It's a brutal retelling of a religious story. It's quite a confusing film. I actually went in knowing what everything kind of symbolized. I looked it up beforehand. I'm not sure why, but I think it was actually a good idea. The ending is incredibly disturbing. Jennifer Lawrence's character of the mother is pregnant and she gives birth, but there are loads of people in her house that she doesn't want there. They are uninvited. She gives birth, and then the baby is passed around, but as it's passed around, people are a little bit too rough, and then they start eating it. So I don't know if that's like kind of like when people say eating the body of Christ. I can't really remember. All I know is that it is disturbing. So of course this one has to go in Put Shrek On Now. Next is the ending to Smile. Smile is a film about a curse. You get this curse when you see somebody off themselves in front of you. They are smiling whilst they're doing it because they are basically kind of possessed or kind of put under the spell of this big demon that only the person who's cursed sees. The main character Rose actually gets cursed at the start of the film, and we follow her journey through the 7 days of things progressively getting worse, her starting to see things and kind of lose her mind. The film does end on the 7th day. The creature comes to claim her and it makes her set herself on fire, so she is burnt alive. The creature is really scary, but it is so cool. I absolutely love the creature design. This one has to go in ingrained in my brain. Next we have Evil Dead from 2013. So we follow Mia, who is a recovering drug addict, and her friends who go and stay in a remote cabin in the woods. But whilst they're there, they start to smell something strange and realise that there is a bunch of very weird stuff down in the basement, including a suspicious looking book which ends up being the Necronomicon. One of the friends reads the Necronomicon aloud, causing all sorts of chaos. Mia becomes a deadite, but then her brother manages to save her soul by burying her alive and then quickly unburying her and using a defibrillator. He brings her back to life. She ends up being the final girl, the sole survivor, but right at the end, because the abomination has claimed 5 souls, it rises from the ground and it's quickly coming after her. She manages to get hold of a chainsaw after losing her hands in a really cringeworthy scene. She sticks it on the end of that and chainsaws the abomination in half. The whole final act just looks like a bloody nightmare. I think this one just has to go in first place. It has to go in Put Shrek On Now. It is another day for me now, but I'm back here to finish this video. The next ending is Hereditary. So much happens at the end of Hereditary. We follow a family who has endured a few tragedies. We see the death of Charlie, who is the daughter and the younger sister, but towards the end is where the horror is really ramped up. The dad ends up burning alive. The mum Annie ends up sawing her head off with a piano wire. And then we see the brother, the main character Peter, become King Payman. This ends up being a kind of supernatural family cult. We do see some disturbing imagery at the end when he goes up to the tree house and sees a lot of his family members that are decapitated, bowing down. We see his sister's head on kind of a shrine, and there is also quite a few naked people just kind of standing around. Not only do we have all this happening, but we do have a really terrifying scene where we see the mother Annie, who is now kind of possessed, in the corner of the room on the ceiling behind Peter. It's absolutely terrifying. It's kind of something that you may not notice when you're first watching this scene, and then you look in the background and you see her kind of up there moving. So this one just has to go in S tier. It's got to go in Put Shrek On Now. Next is the ending of Don't Breathe. This is an interesting ending. It kind of really takes a turn onto something unexpected. So in Don't Breathe, we follow a group of criminals that break into a man's house, but he ends up being an ex-war veteran. He is blind, but he can use his other senses really well, and it kind of is a reverse home invasion. They're the ones that want to get out and get away from him. The end isn't my favourite. It is very bizarre. The ex-veteran manages to capture one of the criminals and he ties her down. Then he uses kind of like a turkey baster to impregnate her. It's really, really weird and honestly makes me feel very uncomfortable. It is my least favourite part of this film, so I am going to put it in the bottom tier of weakest part of this film. Next is the ending of the body horror film Tusk. This is a very bonkers film starring Justin Long as our main lead. He goes around and interviews people who have a interesting or strange story to tell. When he sees an ad of a man wanting to share some stories, he doesn't miss the opportunity to go to his house, but this man ends up being absolutely bonkers and obsessed with walruses, especially a walrus that he once met, not sure if he actually met him or not, called Mr. Tusk. He is so obsessed with him that he actually wants to turn the main character Wallace into Mr. Tusk. So we see this transformation of the man Howard do surgery on Wallace and slowly turn him into a walrus, and at the end he is fully transformed into a very scary looking walrus. I love this film so much. It is horrific and it's hilarious. This one has to go in ingrained in my brain because how can I ever forget that final image of Mr. Tusk. Next we have The Killing of a Sacred Deer. This is another really bizarre film, but the ending is where the real tragedy comes in. It's a psychological film where we follow a family who end up having a stranger come into their lives that will honestly change it forever. At the end of this film, the father of the family has to make a really awful decision, and that is to basically he has to kill one of his family members. It's an ending that I really wasn't expecting. You could just feel the tension brewing through this film, ready for a big brutal ending. This one just has to go in S tier. Next up we have the ending of The Ring. The Ring is a cursed film. It surrounds a cursed videotape that if you watch it then things will start happening to you. You will start hallucinating and it kind of sends you mad, but after 7 days the supernatural presence of an angry little girl will climb out of your TV and basically scare you to death. This is a film that really terrified me when I was younger, especially how the people are killed. She kind of just scares you to death, but it leaves this really scary kind of open-mouthed look on your face, which is forever ingrained in my brain. When this film comes to an end, we see the death of the character Noah as Samara comes out of his TV to claim him. I would say it's quite a scary ending, but it's not so brutal, so I'm going to put this one in B tier. Next up we have We Need to Talk About Kevin. This is a very tragic film and it leads up to some really devastating events. We follow Kevin throughout his life in this film. He has always been a kind of problem child. He has a lot of anger inside of him and we see the different life events that kind of led him up to this point at the end of the film where he actually ends up being a school shooter. This is an absolutely tragic and brutal story, so it just has to go in the top tier for brutality. And last on this list, we'll be talking about the ending of Drag Me to Hell. This is one of my all-time favourite Sam Raimi films. Obviously, I love the Evil Dead franchise, but I also really love this film. It's a horror comedy that has some genuinely absolutely terrifying moments. It has some moments that make you laugh. It has that wackiness and over-the-top feeling that we have in the Evil Dead films. This, like The Ring, is actually another cursed object film. A woman ends up doing a gypsy lady wrong and she puts a curse on our main character Christine's button off of her coat. If Christine cannot get rid of this curse, then she will be dragged to hell. Christine desperately tries so many different things to get rid of this curse throughout this film, but at the ending, when we think that maybe she has actually got rid of it, things take a turn and we see her get dragged to hell. She falls on some train tracks because her and her partner Clay are going away, but she falls down and the ground opens up and she gets dragged to hell. This ending isn't too gory or brutal, but I would say it is very iconic. So I'm going to put it in the iconic tier. I'm going to put it in C tier, iconic, but not so brutal. So that is the end of this tier list today. You can also let me know some of your favourites that I can include in a future video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again in another one soon.